Hey guys, my name's Khadroth, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Aesc the Savior, aka Tonelico, aka Big Hat Morgan, as I like to call her. Because again, Morgan Le Fay's version here, this caster form that is her anniversary form, is a gigantic Dark Souls reference. And for those of you guys that are unaware of that, again, just try to understand that Nasu is a huge fan of that series, so it shouldn't surprise you in the slightest that there are several allusions to that throughout her kit and animations. But still, regardless of that fact, Ace the Savior is a very interesting unit. I think a lot has been said about her lore and her candidacy as an anniversary unit, and we'll go through all of that as we get there. But again, just understand that she's not a unit that you have to have. Her damage performance is actually pretty good, given the fact that she is an AoE buster unit that can touch Black Grail, and that is going to make her, as a caster here, pretty comparable to Ku Caster. With him being her chief competition in that regard, there's certainly some weirdness, as both units are going to be probably reasonably difficult to get your hands on. Again, Ku Caster being story locked and having a very limited number of banners, Ace the Savior being limited and an anniversary unit who those types of units typically don't get a lot of availability. But I do think she is an interesting unit nonetheless, and again, the kit may be a little bit for concern, but once you guys understand it, it should begin to come naturally to you the more you guys use it. So let's go ahead and talk about her stats here from the get-go. So right off the bat, we could see she actually has 11.8k attack. This is a fairly solid number. It's fairly high for a caster. Again, we don't see too many casters that are really good for damage output. So her having almost 12k attack power is pretty nice. From there, her HP is a little bit more on the anemic side, and I'm actually going to have a lot to say about her HP here. Just understand, probably the biggest issue that she's going to have is the relative lack of survivability. Certainly, if you're managing to 3-turn her in a Buster comp, because that probably means you're using Kayan Sky and Oberon, and there's really not a lot of survivability in a comp like that. But I digress. You could certainly use her in comps with, say, someone like Merlin and being able to charge the party, as that is something that is quite her forte. So don't be too terribly concerned about the HP value for right now. She is Earth attributed. She does have 48 star absorption and again 11% star generation, and I'm okay with both of those. Now, she has 6.62 NP charge attack. This is not the greatest, but you'll see why it's not going to be a huge concern for her when we start actually talking about the deck and the kit. Her NP charge defense here is the standard 3%, and her death rate is 30%, which is rather high, but it is what it is. Just be careful if you're using her in some sort of challenge scenario where death is coming into play. Now, we get to the first truly interesting thing about Aesc, and that is that her alignment here is lawful good in her first form. Then it goes to lawful balanced in her second form, and balance is a much harder alignment type to exploit. And then lawful summer in her third form, and that is because her third form is actually a summer unit. And we'll talk about that as well, because that gets a little confusing. So each one of these is going to determine her alignment that may be used for your advantage for buffing the unit, or again, for sort of trying to make sure that a unit cannot exploit that against you if you're managing to try and shift her into stage 2 or stage 3 to avoid, say, anti-good damage or something that a unit you might be facing would have. She is female gendered. She is an Artoria face, aka Saber face there. She is Fey, humanoid, servant, 7 Knight servant, and weak to Inima Elish. In stage 3 specifically, she also adds the Sovereign trait, aka King, and the Summer Mode Servant trait. So again, there's a lot that's been said about the fact that her third form is a summer form, and that is something that is at least interesting, but probably isn't going to impact unit performance too much unless you have some sort of summer-specific buff rolling around that you want to use on her. I do think it is interesting, and people have come to talk to me, and I will state it here that I feel like you're probably only going to get 2 SSRs for summer this year as new units instead of the 3 that we had last year, partially because of this, because this is supposed to be Morgan Le Fay's summer form. So in that regard, yes, it does feel like you'll probably never get a proper summer form, but hey, it is still going to at least give you multiple ascensions and be a very usable unit in that regard. So in that regard, I think you're okay and you don't have to worry too much about this, but certainly people are going to be bummed that they don't get, Morgan in more different bikinis and stuff like that. So it is what it is. Now, with regards to her deck here, she is double buster, double arts. She does have a single quick card, and again, her hit counts are kind of what we expect from a year 8 unit at this point. They're all at minimum 3 hits, which is the average. And from there, her extra attack is a 5 hit, which is also average. The only standout here is the quick card at 4 hits. And so again, as we consider the 0.62 NP gain rate here with 2 arts cards of 3 hits, it's decent. It's okay. It's nothing crazy, but it's nothing bad either. Now, as we look towards her kit, this is where you're really going to have to pay attention, as things do get pretty spicy. So, talking about it, her first skill here is going to charge the party's NP gauge every turn for 3 turns. This is up to 10%, so you will potentially wish to lure the skill, but probably not for this reason. That is to say, within a normal conventional 3-turn farm, this is not even going to come into play. And that's weird. But if you're using her in challenge scenarios, or if you're using her in a sort of hybrid setup where there's multiple damage dealers and you're trying to charge the party, this could certainly become a little bit more of a factor, especially depending on the rest of the units in the cohort and what they're going to be able to have in terms of charge. She will also gain critical stars every turn for 3 turns of up to 10. So right there, she pretty much has an MLB fragment of 2030. And then she ends up also having the ability to charge her own gauge by an additional 50%. This is solid. That means right there off the bat, she is a 50% charger, and that means you have the capability of 3-turning with her if you couldn't already tell it just from the 10% charge. But on top of all of this, she also increases her own NP damage for 3 turns by 20%. So this is definitely a solid skill. The biggest issue that you're going to have with this skill is its cooldown at rank 10 is 7. And with the majority of the ways that you're going to be using Aesc in an actual 3-turn farm, you're probably not going to be using something like Atlas. That means even with a double Koyanskaya, you would not be getting back to this skill, but in most cases, you won't be using double Koyanskaya with her. In fact, you're probably going to want to use double Oberon with a single Koyanskaya. That should be your best potential scenario, and I will talk about that as we get deeper in. So, her second skill here is going to be a very interesting charisma skill. Fandom doesn't do a great job of displaying this, so allow me to explain. This is a charisma, and it is going to scale dependent on the amount of HP she has from her total. Now, this does mean that right here when it says increases the party's attack for 3 turns, this is the stated guaranteed buff that is always active, regardless of HP value. So if you lure this skill, it is on a 5-turn cooldown, which is solid. That means you can probably get it back if you were using double Koyan, but we probably won't be. Still, this does mean that that's a solid 20% guaranteeable right there. But if you'll remember, we can Black Grail loop with her, and Black Grail does have a little bit of a damage tick at the end of each turn. So with that, your first thing up here is the fact that it will grant the party attack up that activates if their HP is 99% or less. And it will increase it an additional 10% for 3 turns. So from even 1 tick of Black Grail, you would then be at 30% attack up instead of just the standard 20. But it's even easier than that. You see, if you manage to use Black Grail, you're not going to get that tick until the next turn. If you use Koyanskaya, though, Koyanskaya's skills, particularly her charge skill, have a demerit where they actually drain the target of some of its HP. That means that even turn 1, by placing her charge skill on her, you're going to get the benefit of that 99%. And certainly if you were to use her in some sort of scenario that is a little bit more long-term, getting to something like 75% wouldn't be impossible, especially in a double Koyan setup or something like that. But this is an interesting thing. So first, let's talk about the fact that yes, with each percentile you go down, and the breakpoints are 99, 75, 50%, and then 25%. From there, basically, you get 10% for each amount you go down, for a maximum potential of under 25% there, being 60% attack up. That is really strong in and of itself. However, it's also going to grant a regeneration buff for herself for 3 turns. And what that does is, if the party's HP is 100%, it gains 10 critical stars every turn for 3 turns. So that right there is yet another stars per turn type of skill in her kit. It is really, really strong and really nice. Now, like we already talked about, the issue here is going to be, can you actually unlock these? But again, this is going to be pretty guaranteeable that you can at least get the first 2. The first one's absolutely guaranteed, and the second one is any amount of HP down or anything like that will give you that benefit. The thing I wish to mention here is that if you have foes on her, if you grail her, because the determinant for this HP calculation is based off max HP value, this does mean that you're stretching her HP. It's going to make it harder to hit these lesser values because you would need more and more hits to your health in order to actually hit those percentages. This means that, say you had a 10,000 HP Aesc, and again, Koyanskaya were to rob you of 2,000, that right there would put you at the 80%. So you wouldn't necessarily get to the next one, but if instead you had 12,000, you would basically only be down to 10,000 at that point, which is not going to be the 80%. That's going to be a higher percentile at that point. So that's the issue that you're running into, is because this is percentile based, grailing and gold foeing her doesn't necessarily work out as well for her. However, it can still work in your favor later on, as again, for instance, if we were to talk about her third skill here. So, as you can see, her third skill here is a bit of a doozy, but just to quickly continue with that thought, this skill does grant the party guts of guts status for 1 time over 3 turns. However, at rank 10 of the skill, it will pop you up at 3,000 HP. Well, if you grailed and gold foed your unit, that means that that 3,000 HP is less of the percentage. So in a weird way, it's still not a total gimp to do that. It's not going to be that big of a deal in the first place. But again, I think the damage that you would get out of grailing and gold foeing the unit is going to be superior than worrying about these breakpoints in percentage that you can't really naturally get to anyways, which is pretty much the 75% on down. And from there, that's where I'm going to say this point doesn't really matter until you get into challenge environments and stuff like that. But again, the upside would be that as you popped up with the guts, it would be less of a percentage of the max HP and thus not be as big of a concern. So definitely something to keep in mind. But let's actually talk about this third skill, because this one is a weird third skill. In fact, it might be one of the weirdest skills we've seen in the game in a long time at this point. So to understand this, this skill starts out on cooldown. It is not available to you turn 1. And that is what it's trying to tell you here. When you enter the battle, turn 1, this skill has a 5-turn cooldown that you have to wait on. The good part about this is she has multiple ways of dealing with this. But let's talk about what the skill actually does. So once the cooldown is up and you can activate it, it allows you to charge the party's NP gauge by 50%. That's pretty damn strong. It's going to increase the party's NP damage for 3 turns by 30%. It's going to grant the party the gut status that we already talked about of up to 3000 HP. What's the issue with this? Well, the issue is once you activate it, it then goes on a 10-turn cooldown. So for you to try to cooldown, reduce, and get back to this a second time, you would have had to have gone basically 15 turns worth of either actual turns or cooldown reduction and all that. It's very difficult to actually normally hit within normal parameters. But in a challenge scenario where she might be NPing a lot, this isn't actually that crazy. You're not going to get back to it within 3 turns a second time, but you could potentially get back to it relatively fast regardless. So, obviously this is strong in and of itself, but keep in mind that this skill, as the note here denotes, is also affected by cooldown reduction. So, if you use Koyanskaya's charge reduction skills, you can get to this skill even faster. So remember, it starts out on a 5-turn cooldown, turn 1, but you can get to it basically naturally, as long as you're utilizing her NP with maybe some form of cooldown reduction. So utilizing Koyanskaya here is ideal because that's going to get you, and again, the way to think about this is, in a normal 3-turn cadence, you're going to automatically get 2 turns for free. So you're going to start out at a 5-turn cooldown. Turn 2, it would be at 4, and turn 3, it would be at 3. So that's -2. Koyanskaya would reduce these numbers further, as let's say you were to pop it here on turn 1. Koyanskaya's charge skill would then get you to 2 and 1. So just Koyanskaya's, you'd still be a little bit short. But to give you a little bit of a sneak peek right here at the NP, it has an overcharge effect that reduces the cooldown of her 3rd skill by a minimum of 1. So every time she NPs, she's going to lose it. So if you're 3-turning with her, if you're managing to fire off multiple NPs, you're going to get the cooldown reduction specific to this 3rd skill. And keep in mind, it's just this 3rd skill. It's not anything else. It's not any of her other skills, it's not anyone else in the party, just her 3rd skill. But that means that instead of having -1 for each turn, if you were to NP that turn, it would be -2. So you'd get the normal turn tick as well as the cooldown from the NP. So instead, you'd be looking at 3 and then 1 here. So add in Koyanskaya on turn 1, and now you're looking at it being 1 and then basically -1 here or 0 by turn 3. So you're able to get this back. You're able to activate it on turn 3, but you're not going to get to it a second time. That's why this skill is so weird. It's so difficult to wrap your head around because it's just such a odd skill and doesn't function the way our normal skills do. But again, that's the easy takeaway. And I'm going to do a demonstration at the end of this video showing you guys how she actually works in premise. So let's take a look at her passive skills here. She gets Territory Creation EX, increasing her own arts performance by 12%. This is just naturally going to really help her arts capability. Item Construction C here, improving her debuff success rate by 6%, but we're probably not going to worry about that too much. And then Magic Resistance B here, improving her own debuff resistance by 17.5. And then Fey Eyes C, as she is a Fey, giving her critical attack chance resistance by 12%. So definitely an interesting set of passives, but honestly, nothing too strong here other than maybe the Territory Creation. Now, talking about her appends, I highly recommend going for her mana loading first, because this opens up the possibility for utilizing her in a better comp. And I'm going to talk about the 2 ways you can 3-turn with her from 0, and one of them does result in a better situation for you. So definitely you want to get the mana loading unlocked. You want to get it to at least 10%. You don't have to max it. Again, you can if you want, depending on what sort of like hybrid setup you might be running. It might help you out, especially with overflow charge. But otherwise, I'm going to say just for 3 turning with her and normal support setups, you're probably just going to want the mana loading unlocked. Her third skill here is anti-berserker, and that does make it a strong second candidate for it, but I still would go with the mana loading first for more power whenever you use her versus more power when you're facing specifically berserkers. So this one's still really strong, definitely a second option for you. And then honestly, the first one here being extra attack finesse has never been a bad append. Certainly you guys can go after it. It's not going to, as it's not only going to improve the extra attack's damage, but also its NP gen and its star generation. Certainly not a bad append, but probably the third one out of all 3 that you would want. Now let's talk about her NP. Now she does get differently named NPs depending on the stage, as stage 3 is more of a summer ascension. I'm not going to talk about that one too much because it's just the exact same thing. But again, let's actually take a look here at what the NP does. It is a 5-hit AoE buster. We don't really care too much about the hit counts here, as we're not going to be trying to generate Noble Phantasm with it. Instead, this is just, hey, it's AoE and it's buster. This will grant herself invincibility for 1 attack, 1 turn. This is where her survivability does come in. It's just not particularly strong, as it's only the 1 hit, and if she does get beelined and focused down, she doesn't have a lot of HP, and again, you have a comp setup that's sort of designed to sack her HP value. So at the end of the day, it's nothing too crazy, but I do like the fact that she at least gets this per NP, which should be pretty much how you're utilizing her, is rattling these NPs off. She's then going to deal damage to all enemies. And then from there, she's also going to deal extra damage, aka super effective damage, to evil enemies. This is a really, really nice niche here, because not only are there a lot of evil enemies in the game, but this also means that she is super effective against them, which is the highest scalable multiplier that you can really get out there, outside of, like, again, you know, something like Oberon's NP damage boost. This is a multiplier that multiplies with everything and is not additive, for those of you guys that understand a little bit more about the damage formula. She then will also reduce their defense by 20% for 3 turns. So this is not going to be on her NP and before her NP, but rather after the NP's damage goes out, then it puts the defense down on it. So it's not going to impact your damage at least turn 1, but certainly if you're going up against the same set of enemies multiple times, like say in a break bar scenario or a challenge scenario, there you go. You would have that stacking defense down that will help you deal more damage over time. But I think for a lot of you, it may be useful, at least in a farming setup, where you go like, oh man, I didn't quite have enough damage to kill. And then my cards are able to sort of mop up after the fact due to the fact that there was defense down applied. So certainly a really strong thing there. Her overcharge effect here also, though, is going to improve her own buster performance for 1 turn activating first by a whopping 30%. That's strong right there, but again, the fact it's only the 1 turn means it's not going to be stackable like we've seen with some of the other crazy units. Still really solid and really good. But as we already talked about here, the true consideration is that it reduces her own 3rd skill cooldown by 1. So again, this doesn't apply to anything else, but just her 3rd skill. So this is going to help you get to that 3rd skill faster and be able to activate that 50% charge. You are going to need some other form of cooldown reduction, but hey, it's certainly nice and definitely something you're going to be wanting to do with her. So, like I said, that's already her in a nutshell. Just to very quickly show you what her Bond CE does, it also grants the party NP damage up, which activates if their HP is 50% or less by 30%. Rather niche, but there could be some interesting practical applications of this for maybe having her handle a wave after getting, say, like Chen Gonged or something like that, but your main goal might be to actually buff the crap out of someone else. So it certainly depends on what your application would be, but it is an interesting one. So that's overall her kit. Let's talk her damage output here. Now you can see already she has skyrocketed to basically 3rd on the charts here, just ever so slightly behind Summer Nero. The problem with this is again that this considers all of her skills to be in effect. Not any sort of external buff here from any supports, and not any sort of craft essence coming into play. Now, with regards to that, that does mean a unit like Umucaster here, who can't touch Black Grail at the moment, certainly is going to get a little bit more left behind in that regard. So Aesc is going to be a unit that can touch Black Grail. And we already pointed out her capability to just deal far more damage gets a little bit nutty here. So again, basically there is your normal NP1 neutral damage. Here would be your damage against another neutral target there. But if you manage to get her HP below 25%, so like Qinggonging her, okay, that would then bump it up to 29k. If you manage to have the third skill in effect, that's the NP damage up, that would get you 27k. That's what you guys could expect by turn 3. If evil alignment is in effect, that's going to get you 33k. And honestly, I'm not really going to talk about this because unless you're Qinggonging her, I don't see you getting this effect all in a sequence in a row. I would have rather have seen actually instead here just the last resort and evil alignment stacking. But sadly, we don't get that number from the sheet. Still, rest assured, she will do good damage for you. I think a lot of people have compared her to, again, Kucaster here, as if you manage to have your Kucaster at NP5, he's capable of about 22k. The thing with Kucaster is he can definitely be speedy. He's only going to require, if you have his append unlocked and Lord, basically just double Koya and Skya. So that might be better for some of you depending on how you want to roll. But certainly, while it is close here, this is close without any of the niches in play. So keep in mind that, yeah, you certainly could go after NP2 and then just end up saying like, okay, now this is already enough that Kucaster's not going to be touching that. Plus, again, remember, like we said, Kucaster could be used with Oberon or something in the third, as the third support, but you don't have to. So I'm going to say it's a little bit of an apples to oranges argument there, as Kucaster can kind of do a similar amount with less. But yeah, at the end of the day, if you need more damage, Aesc would be there, and you could use Oberon with her and massively boost her. So just really up to you to determine what you want to do. Now, again, I do think that she is a solid unit, so don't let this sheet confuse you in that regard. Talking about whatever craft essences we want to use for her, it's gonna be Black Grail. Even if you don't have an MLB, certainly getting just even the single copy here, that will allow this to be boosted further by Oberon. Again, if you manage to be lucky enough with MLB here, you've got the 2400 attack scaling and the 80%. Sadly, this is a very rare limited CE, so it's hard to get your hands on. But again, there are numerous other options like Heaven's Feel, Angel's Song, and again, other lower rarity options for you should you so choose. And keep in mind too that because Tonelico here is a unit that can start from 0, we don't have to use Black Grail. We might be using an event CE. So as long as you can start from 0, you can use any CE that you want, any CE that helps you work. Rising Mudrain is also another option, as again, it is sort of your Black Grail Light that has additional overcharge effect. And the thing to keep in mind about this is the overcharge effect does come into play with regards to the charge reduction granted from that effect. So you might be able to get to her third skill faster and be able to utilize it on turn 2, or maybe again just not have to worry about it in certain scenarios where you're maybe only handling 2 waves with her or something like that and trying to charge someone else. So keep in mind, you could play around with the overcharge to try and manipulate it so that you get it faster. Up to you ultimately to determine how you wish to do that, but definitely a really, really nice one. So with that in mind, chat, I would now like to also showcase for you guys the actual application of this. So on screen, you guys can actually see I have an NP2 Tonelico, aka Big Hat Morgan, aka Aesc here. And the way I'm going to start it out is with my normal Black Grail, as I don't have MLB on my JP account. And I don't even end up having the append, but we can very quickly go get that just to showcase it for you, as I do manage to be having that NP2 and not having to bond for. But if you didn't have it, if you weren't quite capable of unlocking it right on the outset, remember with NP1 of an SSR, just get that unit to bond 6. That will allow you enough coins to at least unlock the first copy, since you get 90 from it. So as long as you've gone and done that, you guys should be able to start her out with that 10% charge. Kind of that same thing that we were talking about with Salter there, as this is going to really help you. And I'm just going to run in here and do a training grounds real quick, since obviously this is something I end up needing due to the class score system. I was not around in the original days and managed to have, again, something crazy like the Da Vinci Lotto or something to get me a lot of statues. But just to kind of showcase here, what we're going to be running this with is double Oberon here and Koyenskaya. And again, it's not really going to matter too much. You are going to want plug suit, but which variant you use, up to you. So again, just understand that the big requirements here are actually having the supports to support her and having the skills lord. Otherwise, the craft essence is interchangeable, which variant of the plug suit's interchangeable, and you can do a lot. And then obviously having her mana loading unlocked there. So now you can see turn 1 here, just like I talked about, she doesn't have her third skill unlocked. And that's something I really wanted to show you here. It starts out turn 1 on cooldown, which is very rare, very weird. We're going to go ahead and activate her second skill now. And you guys can actually manage to see that right here, just like we had talked about, she has the multitude of buffs from this skill. You're guaranteed the one, but the others don't activate. They're grayed out until you get to a lesser charge amount. So we'll go ahead and activate her first skill as well here, granting her NP damage up, her charge per turn, and the charge for herself. Okay? But, oh, no, I actually just messed that up. So we'll go ahead and showcase the other variant right now, and I'll end up showing you this. So this would be what you would do if you didn't have her append skill. So right off the bat, if you didn't have it, you would do this. This would get you instead to 100%, as you would start out with the 50% charge and then start out with Koyenskaya's charge. That'll get you everything you need there. But certainly, you can go ahead and activate everything from Koyenskaya and go ahead and rotate her, and that will work for you. So from there, we can't do anything with the double Oberons yet, but just to really showcase something here real quick, do notice that she does have the second proc now active due to the fact that Koyenskaya's charge skill got rid of some of the HP here. So now she's got that 99% chance or less here that you guys can actually get an additional 10% attack up from. So like I said, this is not the better variant. This is what you would do if you don't have the append. But for instance, we can go ahead and NP right here real quick and kind of showcase a little bit of the damage. It's not the most optimal damage. It's not MP5. It's not MLB, Super Scope, or anything like that. But you'll see it actually does a pretty decent job. And again, right here, I think some people would tell you that this is a little bit of an Elden Ring reference. So like I said, you can tell Nasu certainly likes a lot of Dark Souls in this. But just to very quickly showcase, again, now on turn 2, she's gotten the 10% charge from her first skill's charge per turn, and you can go ahead and activate both Oberon's 20%. You can then go ahead and activate one of the Oberon 50%. Now, for those of you guys that are familiar with Oberon, you know he drains 20% a turn later. That is the negative effect here. And you can see we're about to get our third skill. So that would be a concern of, oh no, what happens here? Does the skill automatically activate? It does not. You can press it whenever you need it. So we're going to go ahead and fire off the NP one more time, and you'll see this will also reduce the skill cooldown, but because we were only one turn away, it's really not going to have any effect because the natural turn progression would have gotten it even if the NP didn't. So we will have the third skill now for turn 3 here to activate and give us 50% charge. But remember, it's not just 50% charge for us. It's 50% charge for the party. So as we activate it now, you can see both the Oberons have reached full. And that's another interesting mechanic, as we've talked about this with, say, Castoria comps, how a lot of the power of them was also the ability to get the supports to their NP naturally within a 3-turn time period. So there's definitely some strength there. I'm going to go ahead and activate the Mystic Code buff. I'm also going to go ahead and throw on Oberon's third skills here. Do keep in mind you're not getting the double up of the NP damage boost, but you will at least manage to get the buster up from the second application of the skill. So really, really strong there. And again, you can see we're just going to be solid and we're going to deal quite a bit of damage here. This is the power of having an appropriate support setup with right CEs and again, a Lord unit. So do keep in mind that this is something that even free-to-plays can achieve if they build towards it and work for it over time. Certainly not easy, does require a little bit of luck maybe on the CE drops and stuff, but hey, it is what it is. As long as you guys try to get the supports, you too can do this. Like I said, now I'm going to show you the better variant of this 3-turn. And this one should work a lot better in that regard. Actually, hold on, let me back out here and basically showcase it again. So keep in mind, the setup for this is no different. It is basically going to be the exact same order. The only difference here is going to be the order in which you change the skill. Well, I could use CZ here. CZ's got basically Ox Demon King, but I think for the purposes of this, I will just showcase just a normal Oberon in here so that you don't get any sort of misconstrued damage numbers. This Ox Demon King would buff the buster damage output even further. But again, you're still going to start out with the double Oberon setup, but one of them in the back line. And you're going to end up utilizing Koyanskaya's skills, and I'm going to tell you how here. As we load in, the only thing different you're going to do now that you have the append unlocked, is going to be, you're just going to go ahead and pop her second skill here. Don't pop her first skill. We don't need the charge per turn, and while we do get NP damage up from that, it's only the 20%. So what we're going to go ahead and do is pop all of Koyanskaya's stuff on her without activating the first skill and go ahead and rotate her out. This gets you all the Koyanskaya buffs. The cooldown reduction doesn't impact your first skill, but you didn't get back to it anyway since you were only using one, so it didn't matter. But what this allows you to do now is get all of Koyanskaya's buffs, as well as both of Oberon's 20% here that have 30% NP damage each tied to them. That's getting you even more damage for turn 1 should you need it. And now we're just going to go ahead and fire off the NP, and you guys will be able to see how strong this can be. Now, keep in mind too that yes, we are missing out on that NP charge per turn, but we really didn't need it. We have a guaranteeable 200% charge remaining in this comp. 50% from Tonelico's first skill, 50% from her third skill, and then 50% from each of the Oberons. So the next two waves are already solved. That is to say, we can go ahead and pop this now and pop one of Oberon's skills here, and it's going to function the exact same way. So the benefit of having the append unlocked is just being able to actually utilize her right off the bat in an even stronger way. This is sort of the difference that having that mana loading unlocked can make for you. And again, you can see here, she definitely does solid damage. Obviously, these aren't the most robust of enemies, and you can see there we did drain the 20%, so that 10% per turn went bye-bye. But it doesn't matter, as we're going to get this anyways, and basically have all the setup that we need. So the only difference there, really, in having the mana loading unlocked is the amount of damage you can pump turn 1. That's it. That's the only difference. But hey, it can matter if you have a little bit more of a robust turn 1, especially as we start looking at 90 plus or 90 plus plus nodes. So that is why I'm going to tell you guys again to try and focus on that and unlock that first. But again, let me know what you guys think about Aesc, aka Big Hat Morgan, and whether or not you guys will be willing to roll for her when she comes to NA, and how you guys think she performs with respect to her competition. I'll be curious to read your comments and see what you guys have to say about this unit. And I will see you guys for the next one.